Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Rydell, actor and now podcast host, I guess. That guy you've seen on a million TV shows and movies, but you still do not know my name.
And I'm David Allen Bache, actor and sometimes producer, and you also recognize me from lots of films and TV shows, but you probably couldn't name one of them right now if I paid you to.
The two of us and our guests are going to let you in on some secrets on how to make it as an actor and share some private stories from the many movies and TV shows that we've worked on.
That's right, we're going to interview a special guest each week, and we'll get their best advice and wisdom for you about how to break into this business and how to stay in it. And yes, again, there will be stories, stories, stories. So, let's get to it.
This is Confessions of a Working Actor.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to Confessions of a Working Actor. Listen, I am on my own this week. I am hosting solo. My co-host Chris is with his dad. His dad's health is declining, and I'm going to handle this episode so that Chris can go spend some time at his dad's bedside. And of course, we wish his whole family well, and hopefully he'll be back on the mic next week. We shall see. So if I don't completely botch this, then maybe people will say, oh yeah, he can handle it on his own. Who knows? Well, listen, the good news is this week our guest is someone that I know quite well, that I spent 5 years, a little more than 5 years working with. And not only is she incredibly talented, she's a good human being, and I think a great example for people in this business about what they can do and who they can be and the kind of person that they can be. So before she starts to think I'm blowing too much smoke up her ass, let's welcome the incredible Kelly Stables.
Hey!
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend.
It's so good to see you.
Oh my gosh, we had a huge chunk of our lives together. Look at this.
We did. We really did. And so for any listeners that didn't know, Kelly and I were on a TV show called The Exes together. It was a good almost 5 years, I think 64, 65, 66 episodes, something like that. So fortunate as actors to ever have that steady of a gig. We were very lucky, and we were surrounded by other wonderful people and interesting people. The inimitable Kristen Johnston, who I think would describe herself as a handful. So that's not speaking out of school. She is one of my favorite people, and also one of the people that drove me batshit crazy. But God, I love her. Kristen, come on the show. Kelly, do you think Kristen would come on?
You know, I think anybody from that show, cast and crew included, would do anything for you, David.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice to hear. Well,
you might have to catch Kristen on a good day, but I think
we'll see.
Come.
We'll see. Well, I'm working on Wayne and Donald too, so we'll see. But you and I spent a long time together, and we talk about on the podcast we do. Chris and I usually talk about how people got started, and that's one of the first questions we ask is, how did you get started in this crazy business? And I want to ask you, I want to start there. I want to, we'll get into a few of the things, not just the Exes, but Kelly was on 2.5 Men in a very recognizable role. Superstore. There's lots of other things to talk about, but if someone said to you, hey, Kelly, how'd you get started in this crazy business? Where would you begin?
How did I get farted? Well, let's see. Gosh, as probably many people who are drawn to this podcast are interested in, they may have a heart for acting and performing and have known it from the very young age. And that's what it was for me. I mean, I was 3 years old, and I knew at 3 years old, this is what I wanted to do.
Were like, I'm ready for my close-up? Were those your first words?
No, I was in the little preschool, Christmas, play, and I was one of three little 3-year-old angels watching over this baby Jesus in the manger, and these other two little girls were giggling the little thing because oh, people are watching, and I'm like, these angels should not be giggling. We need to be angelic. They weren't taking it seriously. And then as soon as my parents got me a video camera, it was any opportunity to make my friends take it seriously and perform, and I would do that. So that was in Missouri. And then so I asked my parents if I could go right away to New York or California, and they're like, let's get a college degree just in case you change your mind. And they phrased it as in case you change your mind, not something to fall back on.
Right. That's right.
And
That's
I
good.
thought
I
that,
like that. I like that.
mm-hmm,
That's a positive. That's a
yeah,
positive attitude. Good. Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, so I graduated college early and moved out here to Los Angeles, and I
Hmm.
picked Los Angeles over New York at the time only because uh, Will and Grace and Friends was all on TV, and I thought I think a sitcom seems so much more doable alongside having a family than it would, going through the snowy streets of New York and trying to make it as a Broadway performer.
Wow. I'm amazed that you had that presence of mind that early on. That's pretty cool.
Well, just as much as I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be a wife and a mom, and 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 have that an important part of my life. So it really was
Mm.
like, where could I do, maybe try to do
Mm.
both of these?
Yeah.
And you obviously have done it in New York, but you're braver than I am.
Or stupider. I think I'd go with that. So you after Missouri, you
Yeah,
came to L.A. and
I didn't know. I
you.
knew one person, and it was my dad's wife's aunt, and that's who I lived with for like 2 weeks until I found an apartment here in LA.
Cool.
And so yeah, so I didn't know really anybody or anything. I didn't know anything about camera technique or anything
Mm.
on like the film side. I did theater as much as I could my entire life. But yeah, so then I just like, honestly, like I knew no one, and I signed up to with an extras agency, and they cast me as a monkey in Planet of the Apes. That was like my
Okay.
first job.
Okay. Great.
And then yeah, I
Wait,
met
I
Rick.
have to write that down on the episode description. The first job, monkey on Planet of the Apes. That's great. I'm typing.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Please continue.
yes. So yeah, so I met Rick Baker through there, legendary makeup artist.
Legendary,
Yeah,
iconic
yeah,
makeup artist Rick Baker.
yeah, and could not be a kinder man, and a true artist, like loves creating.
I've
And
heard that. I've heard that about him.
yeah, and so just so precise in what he does. And so I was through meeting him through that, he then
Mm.
later on did the Ring movie. He did the Samara
Ooh.
makeup for the Ring. And when I did like a couple of the doubling parts in the first movie for that, because I was the size of a kid and they could work me all day without a school teacher and a parent on set. So when the sequel came
Aha.
about, they just called and offered me the actual part of the evil Samara. So
Got it. Now let's
that,
just for our listeners,
yeah.
because this is not a visual medium. So although you can't see how stunningly beautiful Kelly is, you also can't see what's the word that you would use that makes you feel okay, or doesn't in any way make you feel like I'm being heightist or what? Your height
Oh,
is four
I'm
four
four
ten.
eleven.
Four
Yeah,
eleven.
yeah.
So Kelly is 4'11". So one might say diminutive. One might say I don't know what one would say. All I know is the best joke we had on the Exes that I
Oh yeah,
still remember to this
yeah.
day is the first time you walked in the door,
Donald.
Donald Faison took one look at you and said, "Wow, you look like someone put a hot chick in the dryer."
That was such a good, yes,
And
such a good line.
such a great line. So, all right. So the point is, I'm just drawing the attention to this only to say, because you were smaller and you could pass for the kid in the
Child.
movie, the child in the movie, that was something that ended up working to your advantage. Okay, so
100%. And and further on that note, I know you're going to get into sort of the greater picture of all this stuff too, but I think a big lesson that I learned early on is to not we're all so different, right? So if we can
mm,
be like, we can like own our differences, and if you're humble enough to say you can use it, you can make fun of it, I think it's going to be to your advantage, as
mm,
opposed to someone who may say, no, I don't want to be a character actor, or no, I don't, I'm too good for this, I'm not going to do these kinds of roles. I mean, for me, work is work is work. And if you show up and you make great connections and you have a great time, you have one life to live. So who are you to say like,
yeah.
no, I'm not going to.
Well, this is a great point. This is a great point. And you're right. I want to get into it a little bit more. But this, because we're going to ask a little bit more about advice to people just starting out in this business, but also
Mm-hmm.
people at every different level wanting to get to a different level or do something else creative. So, um, we've often heard from guests, be yourself. I always say, don't try to be what you think casting wants you to be. You have to do your version of it. And hearing you say, hey, look, if you are saying, I don't want to be typecast in this way, or I don't want to call attention to this, that's one choice. Another choice is, hey, I see what is different about me. I see what's unique about me, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. I think that's great advice.
Yeah. The ironic thing is I think when someone sees me for the first time or they meet me for the first time,
Mm.
the first thing they may notice is my size.
Mm.
But it's the last thing that I think about if you would ask me to describe myself.
Sure.
I mean, my parents were petite or people themselves, and so no pun intended, but they never made like a big deal about my anything
Right.
physical
It's
about
not
me
not something I would think to mention about you. I would
because
start
you
with
know
lots of
me,
other things because I know you.
right?
That's right. Well, let
But
me ask a
yeah.
question about this. So, um, what's something that you wish you knew back then when you were starting out, when that work first started to come, after the ring and that started to happen? What's something you wish you knew back then?
Oh gosh, I wish I would have. I wish I would have taken the money that I earned early on and invested it more into myself,
Ah.
like with acting classes, with and that kind of thing. And I am a
Mm.
saver, and I don't like to spend. I don't like to spend a whole. I'll still shop at like Marshalls, and I love to go to like garage sales and repurpose things and find things. I love that. And I don't like spending money on myself too much. And so
Mm.
I wish I would have taken that money and been like, okay, like how can I, you know, put that back into my career as opposed to just hoping things go well.
Ah, I love this. That's as clear as anyone's ever put it, honestly. We've talked a little bit about don't neglect the business side of things, right? And I know in some past episodes, I've shared that, early on someone told me it's not called show, right? It's called show business
Ah,
for a
yeah,
reason.
right.
And you can't ignore the business part when it comes to follow up with agents, follow up with auditions, things like that, and, business communication, using all the tools at your disposal. But no one's put it as plainly as that, which is reinvest in yourself. Take some of the money when you start to work as an actor. Take some of the money and take a commercial class, take a voiceover class, buy a better mic,
Right.
get a better set of
Right.
lights for your self tape area, get another little reflector, or get a pin spot or a ring light. Take an acting class, go to a studio. That's such good advice. Such good advice. That's something.
I think
Did you?
taking
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I think taking different kinds of classes is really beneficial, even if you take the class and you're like, that was a waste of money and I did not gel with that instructor or I don't agree. Hey, at least there's always something to learn, right? And I
Yeah.
think, like, as actors, we are always evolving as a person, as people, we are. So,
Hmm.
as actors, we must also, right? So, I think it's cool to I mean, even like I relate acting to baseball all the time. I'm a
Love it.
St. Louis
I love
Cardinals
it.
fan, and I think even when you're up to bat, like once you hit a home run, you get in a series, so to speak. It's not the end. Like we're now off of that series, and now we're auditioning again
Yep.
and
Yep.
testing and still having to prove that we are capable.
Got to hit a
So
single. Yep. That's right.
that's yeah. So it's great to take different classes, but unfortunately, yeah, those cost money, and it's time and all of that.
But I think that's good advice. And when you're first starting out as an actor, I've had either family friends or people say like, "Oh, my kid wants to be in the business," and this one teacher said that they could get them work as long as they take their class and pay their photographer for the pictures. And I'm like, hang on, stop. No,
Yeah.
nobody should need to take any of your money. Now, at
Right.
a certain point, do you want to have a good headshot, a nice, good, professional-looking headshot? Sure, but there's plenty of people to choose from, and acting studios should be teaching you about acting or auditioning or the business, but they should not be promising you work for money because that's not their job.
Right.
So nobody should be doing that. So that's also good advice. That's sort of the other side of that coin. But
Hmm.
I also really like the idea of taking class and learning what not to do. And sometimes you learn that from your fellow classmates, and you see a
Yeah.
style of acting or someone doing something. You're like, I don't love that. That doesn't seem authentic to me, right? And sometimes a teacher says something, and you hope you have a great teacher, and 95% of what they say really really works, really you really resonates for you rather. But it's a good point. Just taking the class, go to class. I'm a big believer of show up. Do something for your artist every day, right? We have to. We're now parents. We are spouses. We are someone's child. There's lots of other things we have to do. But also don't forget, even if you're not on a series, even if you're not doing a play 8 times a week, do one thing for your art every day. And if you're starting out and that's an acting class, that's a great choice.
And that could be as simple as journaling for 15 minutes so that you get to know who you remember. You don't forget who you are, because if the whole point is to be yourself, if you don't know who you are, and I remember who I am by journaling, like it's just like putting my thoughts down on paper makes me realize, okay, yeah, this is what I think, and this might be how I feel, and yeah, that feels right. But if I go too long without journaling or talking to my best friend
Yeah.
since 6th grade, then it's like, wait a second, you feel a little bit out to sea.
Sure. And I just want to circle back. You had mentioned something earlier. I think sometimes when actors say, well, I don't want to take that class, or I don't want to do that job, or when we sort of get in our own way, it's hard to see, right? Because we're literally in our own way, and if we don't have someone outside of us to let us know. But so I want to ask, when some things started happening with The Ring, and I have a sense that you also may have done some stunts or stand-in work or things on other things like Spider-Man or Princess Diaries or other things. Was there any time where you were like, I don't want to be doing this? Like, I'm just going to say no?
For sure. Well, I didn't want to be a stunt woman the rest of my life. I
Right.
didn't want to be a stand-in the rest of my life. But I
Right.
knew this is how I'm going to learn, right? So
There we go.
it's kind of like an entry level position. And I understood. I was like, well, this is where they're taking me. This is where I'm getting a job offer. So I'm going to do it, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to look around and see, oh, this is how this is how the star of this movie performs, and this is how she stands, and this is how she motions with her hand, because I didn't take film class in college. I took theater classes, right? So yeah, so there was definitely a time when I was just starting and doing, getting those jobs and stunts and the things, that was like, I don't want to be doing this, but I'm grateful for the work, and I can learn from it.
And it got you on a set.
Yeah.
I did background work, and it got me on a set. There are people that do background work, and that's how they make their living. And I thank God, because how crappy would everything look without them? We need them desperately, and we need them to be protected well by our union and treated well and paid well.
Yes,
And I did it, so I can say it was tough. Back when I did it, I think it was even harder, and the pay was worse. But the point is, it got me on a set, and I learned so much by doing background work. And people have done stand-in work and then been offered a role on a show. And I remember on the Exes, a couple of times we had a few of our stand-ins. There were roles that came up, and we pushed to get the stand-ins to have the speaking line, get them a little more money, get them a little more exposure. And there is a way in. And if you shut the door and you think you know the way in, you might miss it. But if your eyes are open and you're willing to try things, you tend to be working more.
And it's a hard pill to swallow. I mean, you really do have to kind of say, like, yep, I will put on this monkey mask.
Yeah, right. That's right. Or, I don't know if they even still do this, but, you're stand-in on a sitcom. I will wear a sandwich board
with the character's
name on it.
Yes.
And it's like, and I understand it's for some, we had a lot of new directors that would come in, and people didn't know each other. But I always felt like, can't we just get a T-shirt made? Can we get can we just get a super cool T-shirt made up with the stand-ins' names? Like, you know what I mean? And like, like Keith, who was my stand-in for a long time, like, he was a great Elvis impersonator. I was like, let's make a T-shirt with Elvis on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like my name and then his name. So there is a bit of humiliation / a slight loss of dignity that you have to endure when you're first starting out in this business. That's for sure.
So I was doing a movie in 2004.
Oh, good. Yes. Here comes the story.
In London, and I was alongside Jason Fleming and Mel B, were the other actors in it. And on one of my days off, I took a beautiful walk in the rain cold rainy day to the Shakespeare Globe Museum.
Mm.
And I'm not a big museum person, but I couldn't get enough of this museum.
Mm.
And one of the things that I read was, when acting was originated in all of this, the actors it was like, here's the level of how people considered actors. You want to go to a whorehouse? Should we see a cockfight, or should we go see a play? Like, it was this, we were the scum of the earth. And I think, because of like celebrity and reality shows and, social media, like people becoming like sensations because they do a funny thing. eh, there's so much like, people put people's up on quick pedestals, right?
Mm.
But the bottom line is, like, unless you're an artist and you're willing to be on the ground, be a groundling and be down there. And that's how I need to continue to remember that that's what I am. You know what I mean?
Amen. Amen. I mean, that's one of the first things I was told when I said I wanted to do this business. Was I was told, everybody wants to be a star, but there are very few people willing to become one. And I was like, oh, I like that. That implies a journey and hard work.
Right.
And, absolutely. Well, to that end, what does it mean to you to be a working actor?
Simply put, I think for me, it's to a working actor is to have a majority of my income come from acting. That's what I would say.
Yep. Good. We've heard that. It's interesting. Some actors have said that I'm working on my craft. I'm working on being a better actor. And I would agree with that, too. I think that's an element of it. That's definitely an element of it. And for anyone listening who is not making the majority of their income as an actor, whether you're waiting tables or whatever else you're doing, keep going, because soon that tide will turn, and there's that moment where you realize, like, oh, wow, I'm doing it. Like, I'm an actor. There is no second job. And that's an amazing thing.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that we get into is positive experiences that you've had with other people on sets. And, we don't do dirt or gossip here. That's not our jam at Confessions of a Working Actor, despite the scandalous title. We would love to hear a story, and it doesn't have to be me, of some great actor.
It should rhyme with Avid Wallen Wax.
That's right. That's right. Listen, you and I got along quite well on set. You inspired me. Maybe I made you laugh and inspired you. So moving on from there, some set you were on where an actor or a director or a producer even really surprised you, did something where you loved it and you thought, like, oh, that's how people should be treated. Or, oh, I saw that this creative thing and I always remembered it. Just something that really left you with an impression.
Well, I would say probably Superstore was a really positive experience. When I auditioned and chemistry read for that part, I think it was going to be like possibly 3 or 4 episodes, and it turned into 3 years.
Wow.
And
more than 20, like a couple dozen episodes, right? Like more than 20 episodes. That's great.
Yeah. And so I came in on season 3 of that show, so it was already established. And sometimes when you come in on a show that's already established, they have like them, and then you're like, like, and they couldn't have been, the whole cast, everyone in that cast could not have been more like welcoming and inviting and inclusive, and just like really made you feel like at home. And when we're shooting scenes, and then of course all the time you spend waiting to shoot your scenes. And when they decided to have my character leave, they threw me a surprise party on the last day, and they like bedazzled a set chair for me that everybody signed, and they had like champagne and cake, and I had never been. I was like, I started to cry like an idiot, because I was very
how loving, how nice,
grateful for that time. So that was definitely a surprise, because I didn't expect to be there that long, and
right.
I felt like I was losing something that really wasn't even mine to lose, leaving.
Right. But how nice of them, and it, we've been on sets. I know you have. We've been on sets that are not always as welcoming.
Yeah, you're the stranger.
Yeah, you're the stranger. And look, as a guest star, when you come in, you're a guest, right? That's
for sure.
I try to remember that. I was just on a set of Lioness in Baltimore, and they've been doing their thing, and I came on. I was a guest, and I behaved as such, and that's good advice for for actors just starting out or coming onto a new set, behave as if you're a guest in somebody else's home.
That's right. And you're there also to make everyone else's job easier. Like you're
Yep.
not there for that,
That's
but
right.
you part of your job is to
Make
do
them
your
look
job
good.
and
That's
just
right.
worry. That's right. Yeah.
That's right. And it's interesting, I think, when you combine showing up and being respectful and doing your job to forward the story, when you combine that with never playing small and always bringing to the part what you think is the best thing to bring to the part, you often end up back again, which is delightful. And clearly you came back a lot, which is great. But I love hearing that because sometimes they're unwelcoming sets. Sometimes then people don't mean it. They're having a bad day, or most of the time it's because they're behind, right? They're late, they're tired. The lead cast has been doing fratter days, and they are not sleeping enough. New pages last minute. So I usually chalk that up. I usually give everybody a pass if I show up on set and someone's uncomfortably tired or they're a little short or something. I'm like, okay, all right, you know what? It's okay.
And to showing up on time, just for anybody who might be new, showing up on time means showing up 15 to 20 minutes early.
Thank you. If you're on time, you're late. That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
If you're early, you're on time. Perfect. So speaking of some work, I'm really curious about Holiday Twist, which was a feature film that you did. And is there anything you could tell us about the experience doing that, like what you did on it and how it was?
It was the first film I did post-COVID.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Yeah, and we have not finished shooting.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. And do you have a sense that the project will get finished, or
I have a weird sense that it will,
Yeah.
only because it was an extremely ambitious script considering it was post-COVID. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, we had like so many different locations, shooting in huge mansions in Bel Air that were decorated for Christmas. So this is like a 30-foot Christmas tree in the foyer decorated with the banister so and that we like did for 2 days, and then we have to go to a different location, and then so it was, and the cast was huge, and so it was, but the director producer Stephanie Garvin is a bit of a magic little fairy, and she's the nicest woman, and she's very smart, and she's blonde and beautiful. And so sometimes I think people look at that and they don't give her, they underestimate what she can get done. But I do believe that it will get done. But as of now, they're just trying to bring all of the cast back together. You know, Hugh Sheridan, who's down in Australia, and James Marsden, who's ambassador, who's on tour right now. So there's a lot of elements that will need to come back together. But you know, they could also rewrite it and simplify things.
Yeah, lots of different ways they could do that. I also was asked because I was a little jealous. I've always wanted to do a holiday movie. Like I've always wanted to be in like a Christmas movie, either a sappy one or a funny or irreverent one. And you know, we did happily got to do a bunch of Christmas episodes and Halloween episodes, which I have to unearth some of those and show them to my daughter.
Yes,
since she'd get a kick out of it. Fantastic. So this is now the time on the show where we ask about your worst audition story ever.
Oh, my.
And again, we don't ask to throw shade on anybody. We ask so that other actors listening and other civilians listening can get a sense of what actors have to go through. And other actors who are listening will say to themselves, "Oh, wow, yeah, I had one of those," or "Holy crap, that was much worse than mine. I'm not going to stress out when I have a bad audition." Everybody has them. Everybody has them. I mean, we've had some doozies, and they run the gamut from forgetting your lines to having your fly down to showing up 2 hours late to having loss of bodily functions. So Kelly Stables, tell us your worst audition story ever.
There are so many to choose from, truly. One of them I did like a stand-up routine on, and this isn't the one I'll tell because the one I'll tell is a lot shorter, but this one was essentially how
we have
evolved
time.
from.
We have time.
Well, I told you I started as a monkey, so I evolved, and this was my audition for the Cave Boy. I was
literally a Darwin story here. It's like
pretty much. This is proof. This is proof. It's happening today.
Okay.
So remember that show Cavemen? You may not. You remember the commercials?
It was after the commercial. right? It was spawned by the
Maybe
commercial.
they thought would be a good
And they
idea.
thought, oh, this
Make a
30-second commercial's
series.
funny. Let's make a whole series about it. Yeah. Yeah. Just like
Which,
those short stories they try to make a novel out of. Yeah. Okay.
but however, you know what I do think would be a funny series?
What?
That commercial about you becoming your parents.
Oh, that's true.
I
That's true.
die at those
That,
commercials,
yeah,
mainly
that
because
would
I'm
be
like,
fun.
yep, I do that. Well,
Yep.
no, okay, I do that.
Yep.
All right. So anyway, so I was auditioning, and this part came about to be Rocky the Cave Boy,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband, who is my manager, thought, oh, my wife would be perfect for that.
Okay, first of
Yeah.
all, you don't hear those two sentences
No.
together a lot.
Oh,
My husband, who is my manager, and then thought, oh, my wife would be perfect for the prepubescent boy. Okay, please go on.
Yeah, so that's where we're at.
I love it.
So yeah, so anyway, I auditioned, and I like put an ace bandage around my boobs so I wouldn't look like a woman, and I wore a baseball cap backwards, and yeah, and then I got it. Oh,
Haha.
I booked it, and it was really weird. And he showed up, and he couldn't have been more proud of me. And I'm like, I don't feel good doing this. But anyway, so I'll have to send you a link to that story.
Okay.
But honestly, truly, the probably worst audition that I went on, where I just felt like sick to my stomach. This isn't funny, but there's a series on TV right now. I could tell you, but maybe I will. I don't know.
No need. It's all right.
I tested for it. It was me and this girl who was starring on Broadway, and like two other girls. And I killed the first, like I did a great first audition, and
Mm-hmm.
with the casting directors, and then they brought me in, and I knew this studio was Warner Brothers and CBS. They know me from Two and a Half Men.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Peter Roth was there. We're saying hi, da, 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 all these things, and I was testing with the lead of the show, who was a wonderful actress who was coming off of a hugely popular TV show. It's still on the air, by the way. Anyway, so it was me and her, and I do the audition. This was supposed to be a sitcom.
Uh-oh.
No laughs. None. It was silent. And
that's me adding my worst cricket noise. That's not good.
And I knew, like, first joke, you could hear nothing.
Right.
And then second joke, you're like, okay, there was nothing. It was nothing, just no response.
Oh, so painful.
And I get done, and they're like, thank you, Kelly. And I knew it was bad, and I wanted to say something along the lines of, well, that was great, or, a lot like, and I didn't think of anything clever. So I was like, thank you. And I left. And it was just like, I did nothing different than I had done before, except I was with the actress, and she did wonderful. Obviously, she knows what I thought our chemistry was fine, but I mean, the other girl who was on Broadway, she didn't get it. They ended up getting, I know who they got. They ended up getting, and I think she's still on the show. They ended up getting a very popular singer's wife. She got the part. So she has the part.
Well, so when you come into the room, I've been in those rooms, and I've been in the rooms, and I've been in tests where I've done nothing different, just what I did, and for people who are trying to follow this, who weren't aware, most of the time there's a test for the studio. It's sort of a smaller entity. Then there's another test for the network, and that's the big final approval.
Yes.
And I've gone into the studio, given a great audition, gotten great feedback, and the feedback is do it just like that. And I've gone back to the network and done it just like that and gotten nothing. Like no response at all. I've absolutely been in that same position, and it's excruciating.
Yeah.
Especially, I've also been in the situation where I tanked a little, where I was nervous, where I stumbled on my lines, but that's almost better.
Yes, because then you can blame it on that.
Yes, there's a reason.
But the trouble is, when you've got to the point where you are testing, by that point, at least for me, I'm invested in it and I want it. When it's early on, you're like, oh, this dialogue, please. This isn't going to go anywhere. But once you start to test, you're like, actually, it's really smart wording. This is good.
Because you're closer, you can smell it, you can taste it. Well, so
yeah.
here's a question about that. Recently, I've been asked to audition for different roles in something that I already auditioned for, right? And I was having a conversation with a fellow actor, and and Chris and I have talked about this a little bit. I think that's a good thing. I always think it's a good thing. And my wife was just asked to audition. She auditioned last week for something, and they called and said, "Would you read this other role?" And I said to her, "Great." And she's like, "Yeah, right. I mean, that's got to be good. I always like." She said, "I always like when that happens." And this happened to me this past week, and it's a project that I really like. Who knows if we'll get it? They're remaking the Caine Mutiny court martial. So they're redoing it, and they asked me to read for one of the prosecuting attorney. And I put my heart and soul into this audition, and I did a great self-tape. And sure enough, the answer came back. I get the email. It says, "Casting loved your tape, ... And they want you to read for a different role. Would you be willing to read for this role also?" Who the guy who plays the judge. And I said, yes, hell yes, because I always see that as a positive thing. To me, it means they like the basic essence of who is David Allen Bache. They're like, oh, we like what we see going on here. We might want to slot it into a different spot in our plan. Do you feel that way? If you get called back to read a different role, do you feel like, all right, they're obviously liking them some Kelly Stables, they just don't quite know where to put me? Like, how do you feel about that when that happens?
That hasn't happened to me too much.
Okay.
I think it's happened to me one time, but I would think it's a very positive thing.
I think so.
Yeah.
For sure. And, it's sometimes it's easy as actors for us to say like, I have to jump through all these hoops, right? The studio test, the network test, like we were just talking about, and now we're doing everything at home. We're doing it all on our own. It's rare that we could step foot in a casting director's office. And so sometimes it's easy to get down on ourselves and say like, oh God, they want me to read for something else? Like what was wrong with the first one, right? But I really encourage everybody just, again, I think that's a really good thing. Good thing.
When I was on 2.5 Men, Courtney Thorne-Smith was on at the time. And she had everyone knows who she is, especially in the sitcom world. And she, I think, would just come off that other sitcom. And they didn't ask her to audition. They kind of said, hey, would you like to do this part? And she said, may I audition?
Huh.
And the reasoning was she didn't want the pressure of thinking she has it and she shows up to set and then being like, that's different from what we thought. So she insisted that she at least read for them, you know what I mean? And I thought, that. What a lesson there,
Yes, what a great way to approach that.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, thank you for relaying that, too. Perhaps most importantly, do you have a dog named Lucky?
I do.
I had a dog named Lucky growing up. That was my dog's name growing up. Is your dog a pandemic puppy?
No, she is a Kendrick is finally 10 puppy.
I'm laughing because that's how it goes. They get old enough to talk you into stuff.
Yeah, my older son had wanted a dog since he was 4. And we had said, wait till you turn 10, because I knew I'm going to be the one taking care of this thing.
Yes.
And so now we have this Lucky dog, and she sheds everywhere, and I'm obsessed with her. I miss her when I'm away. Aww. She's so good.
You know what? I have to admit to people listening, there have been a couple episodes where Enzo has been in the booth on my feet. Not by my side or by my feet, on my feet. Sometimes he's just clingy, and when I start to close the door, he gives me that look, and I'm like, all right, bud, come on in. And he's not in here today, but he, sometimes he's like, I just gotta be in there. I gotta hear everything. I gotta know everything that's going on with Confessions of a Working Actor.
I'm gonna confess something.
I know. I think he wants to be on Broadway. I think he's like, he's taking notes. Kelly, thank you for coming on the show. I'm sorry that you missed Chris, but I know he'd be just as impressed with you as I am.
My thoughts are with him. That is not an easy thing. I said, I've been there myself, and I'm so glad he's able to take this time. But it sucks. It's hard.
I don't like hosting without him. He's become my friend and my trusted co-host companion, but if we can do a couple episodes, maybe solo, we buy him a little more time to be with his dad and be with his family, so that's what we'll do. And in the meantime, again, thank you. It was so good to talk to you.
You too.
So many good things to say. And I do want to say we usually end on what's your best piece of advice? And I kind of feel like we hit that, and I think that might be one of the biggest things I take away from this, which is use your difference to your advantage. Like that, I think that really is going to stick with me. I really love that. I really love that. If there's anything else you want to
can
add,
remind me that you can remind
Yeah,
me that I gave that advice once. I'm like, David, I'm too short to work in this town.
I will absolutely.
You can remind me I said that.
I will absolutely remind you said that. For sure. For sure. All right, Kelly Stables, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And we wish you well, and all your boys, and your husband, who's a brilliant manager, by the way, Kirk Patino, if anybody's listening, wants to look him up and tell him you heard Kelly's episode, and he sounds wonderful as a manager. Then go get him. Hey, listen, you can't if you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? All right. Well, thank you, and for everybody listening, we'll be back again next week with another episode of Confessions of a Working Actor. I thought that was awesome. All right, star that.
That was terrific.
And we got another great guest coming up next week, so be sure to tune in again to Confessions of a Working Actor.